What's up, Shady Sports Network? I'm back here with a very, very special guest. Former Kentucky head coach, created the air raid offense, Mr. Hal Mumme. Coach, how you doing tonight?
I'm good, Chris. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you for your time. So right off the bat, the air raid offense is something that's extremely popular in college football, used in the NFL a little bit. How did you and Mike Leach create that?
It started when I was at Coppers Cove High School in 1986. I started experimenting with on those guys, and for 3 years we won more games than they'd won the previous 10. And then I got the job at Iowa Wesleyan, and that's when I hired Mike to come be the offensive line coach at first, and then I promoted him to coordinator the second year. But he was a brilliant guy. But in 1989, when I took that job, if you told an offense, I talked to a lot of offensive line coaches and got turned down by them. They didn't want to work for $12,000 a year. They didn't want to play in a 2-point stance and have big splits and be backed off the ball and have a coach that was going to call 50 passes a game. They thought that was crazy. So after a few failures at interviews, I decided to just hire the smartest person I could find and teach him what I wanted. And that turned out to be Mike. And he did a terrific job with it and basically created the whole offensive line play for the air raid, the drills and the terminology and the way we go about things. He really was the innovator of that. And I did more of the back end stuff, the routes and the quarterback play and things like that. And we worked together for 10 years at Iowa Wesleyan, Valdosta State, and Kentucky. And then he got a big chance to go with Bob Stoops, who at Oklahoma. And Bob was really the first guy that believed in our offense that wasn't on my staff. You know, we had a few guys get jobs off my staff, but Bob was the first guy that we had played against, and he had seen what it could do and wanted to do it at OU. And so he hired Mike. And then, of course, a few months later, or 9 months later, Mike was the head coach at Texas Tech. So that's kind of how it all started.
So, that's amazing, how you were able to create something with Mike Leach, obviously the legend himself.
Sure.
How close have you guys been, and what was your relationship like with him?
Mike was like my younger brother. We talked all the time. Even after he left me, we were still great friends, and we would visit each other every year and go on some vacations together and things like that. And I'm still close to his family. I talk to Sharon about once a month, and Cody, his son, has gone into coaching, and we're trying to help Cody out too.
So, you guys created this, and you took it to Kentucky, which is a big SEC program. They're the only Kentucky coach to beat Alabama. Playing, and your quarterback down there was Tim Couch. What about Tim made him stand out, and what was his preparation like on game days?
Well, we already knew about Tim from when he was in high school because we made, particularly Mike, he was a great recruiter. He made it a point to know where every great passing quarterback was. And as a junior in high school, Tim was the National Player of the Year. I think Gatorade sponsored in those days. And so we knew about Tim. And we also knew about the other quarterback at Kentucky, and Billy Jack Haskins. And so when I got interviewed for the job, Coach Newton, our great athletic director that came and talked to me, he asked me, he said, we got this Western Kentucky kid who everybody loves, and he's going to be a senior. And then we got this freshman going to be a sophomore who Eastern Kentucky loves. And we got a little bit of a controversy there. How would you handle that? And I was able to give him an honest answer. And I told him, I said, well, I've seen both of them play. I watched them both in high school. And I said, Billy Jack in our offense is more of a slot receiver. And so we'll probably let him start at slot receiver, and we'll let Tim be the quarterback. And of all the guys he interviewed, I'm the only one that gave that answer. Everybody else said they'd have a big quarterback derby and all that kind of stuff. And had they done that, Tim was going to transfer. He wasn't going to stay.
So, Tim became one of the best, if not the best, quarterbacks in college football that year.
Yeah.
He ended up going number 1 overall to the Cleveland Browns. Do you still have a relationship with him?
Yeah, we talked. We talked back to. I saw him not too long ago.
And the other quarterback that you had there was Jared Lorenzen, who also went on to the NFL. What made Jared stand out to you during the recruiting process?
Jared we were the only school that offered Jared as a quarterback, and he was a great quarterback. He had a great release. He had a really strong arm, probably the strongest arm I've ever coached. And he was a fun-loving guy, a great natural leader on the field, and I don't think he ever lost a game in high school. I think they won all our games. And we got Derek Smith, his top receiver from Fort Thomas Highlands. We signed them both. And one of them was Mr. Kentucky in basketball, and the other one was Mr. Kentucky in football. And they were the runner-up for the other guy, for the other spot. So they were just terrific athletes and a great passing combination.
So the SEC as a whole has kind of changed over the years. What was the SEC like back when you coached in it?
It was just like it is now. It's the greatest athletes, short of, that aren't in the NFL yet. Most of the schools in that league, the biggest difference going from Valdosta State to Kentucky was the cornerback play and the defensive end play. You had every team in that league has a defensive lineman, and particularly pass rushers, defensive ends, that's going to go to the NFL. And most everybody in that league, even at Kentucky, where we weren't very good on defense when we got there, but we had 2 guys that both went to the NFL playing corner. So it's the best league in college football. There's no doubt.
For sure, I definitely believe that. I think it's produced so many talent. It has the most NFL draft picks like ever. So currently, one thing I wanted to get your take on is, back in the day, NIL wasn't a big thing, right? And we live in a day where college athletes can make money based on their name, image, and likeness. What are your thoughts about NIL as a whole?
I'm not sure yet. I actually am doing some work with some guys for collectives, but I'm not sure where that's going to go. I think the jury's out on it. When I was at Kentucky, and most of the stuff we got in trouble for when I had to leave is all legal now. So, I mean, it's come full circle. I think the NCAA, they were never good at winning court battles, and they were afraid to get sued. So, some of the states decided that they should be able to make this money, and they're going to do it. Now, I've always thought it was totally unfair that Tim Couch had his name and picture everywhere all over Kentucky. And we were 104% capacity for 4 straight years there. And it was always, the greatest players on the team were going to have their likenesses everywhere, and they never got anything for it. So I think in that respect, it's a good rule.
For sure, no, giving the athlete the opportunity to grow. When you coached at Kentucky, what was the practice schedule like? Like, how did you run your team? Run your program?
We ran it. We never changed anything from Iowa Wesleyan to all the places I've coached. It was the same practice schedule, the same spring or training camp schedule. Everything was the same, and I think the beauty of the air raid is that it is rep based. Anything in life you get better at if you do a lot of reps, and it just makes sense. And it was based on the the old free throw theory in basketball is how do you get better at free throws, where you stand there and you shoot a lot of them, And so that's what we try to do. And we try to force people to defend the whole field and have a lot of receivers that could catch balls. Some of them were great players that were multi-talented. Others could only do 1 or 2 things well, but we try to fit them all into the offense. And that's one of the things that really makes it go.
Who are some of your quarterbacks right now in college football that you enjoy and think are going to do well at the next level?
Well, I tell you, to be honest with you, I'm probably going to mess that up because I've spent so much time working on this International Football Alliance. I didn't have time to watch much. I really liked the kid from TCU last year. I'm not sure where he went, but I think he's really a tough kid and has a chance to be a player. And of course, Sonny Dykes was one of our guys, and we were very proud of how well they played last year.
When you were at Kentucky, who were some notable members of your coaching staff?
Well, of course, Mike Leach became a head coach. Guy Morris became a head coach. Chris Hatcher is the head coach at Samford in Birmingham, probably has been now for a good while, and is probably the best football coach in America that nobody talks about. But if you look up like Chris got him, he has a great quarterback coming back down there, and he's running air raid, and he's I think they got to the quarterfinals this past year in FCS. But every single year he plays a money game against the SEC school and scares the hell out of them. He's probably going to beat one of these days. But he just does a terrific job coaching. Dana Holgerson at University of Houston. Now, he wasn't on our Kentucky staff, but he was on our Valdosta State staff, and he played at Iowa Wesleyan. And his offensive coordinator, Shannon Dawson, coached for me at Southeastern New Mexico State and played for Dana when Dana first got into coaching at some smaller schools. Bill Biedenbaugh, who's probably him and Mason Miller at Tarleton are probably two of the best O-line coaches in America. And Bill was on our staff for a while until he got a job. He was also on our staff at Valdosta State. Matt Moore and Neil Brown at West Virginia. Of course, Lincoln Riley at USC was on Leach's staff, and so kind of indirectly there. But he's got some guys on his staff that were with us. I've lost track. There's a lot of them out there. It's hard for me to keep. I'm going to hurt somebody's feelings if I keep going.
That's amazing, and being able to learn from you guys and apply it to nowadays with college football. Do you still attend college football games?
Yeah, I went to a couple of that last year. I went to 3 last year. No, actually 5. I went to 2 of Mike's, and I went to my alma mater, Tarleton, so I went to 3 of their games. And Mike's offensive line coach, Mason Miller, after Mike left and went and is now the offensive coordinator at Tarleton. So I'll probably go to a bunch of their games this year. So and of course, my son, I got to mention him. Matthew's the associate head coach and runs the offense at Colorado State, and I'll hope to see them play a couple of times. Now he's got a young quarterback that's really going to be good. He was only a redshirt freshman last year, but his name's Clay Millen. He's the son of Hugh Millen, who was a great player at Washington and played a long time in the NFL.
So your son, I had to mention him too. He works at Colorado State, like you said. What did you teach him at a young age?
Matt's probably been running the air raid longer than anybody around because he started in the 7th grade at Coppers Cove High School. So nobody knows it better than him. I didn't really have, he kind of came up playing it. So in terms of teaching it, he really was coaching before he got off the field because he was going to be our next quarterback in line at Valdosta State. And then I got the job at Kentucky, and the new coaches came in and totally changed the offense. So he called and said, Dad, I'd rather play one more year at Kentucky than 2 years down here. So he transferred to Kentucky and was Tim Couch's backup quarterback. And Matt was really instrumental in helping Tim get up to speed on it real fast because, of course, the two of them, they roomed together and they hung out together. And at the point in time when the coaches can't go on the field in the summertime, Matt could, and so he did a lot of teaching on the field even as a player.
That's really good that he was involved with that. So fast forwarding a little bit, you were with SMU for a short period of time working with June Jones.
Yeah. Well, June and I have been fast friends for a long time. I first met June in 1983 when he was at Hawaii and I was at UTEP. So it was a long. We've known each other a long time, and we always the run and shoot and the air raid have a lot of similarities. There's more similarities than there are differences, and we'd always talked about working together. And so I decided to leave McMurray, and June called me and asked me to come be his passing game coordinator, and I did that for a year. And we collaborated on a lot of stuff that both of us still use. We use some of his stuff in our offense, and he uses some of the things that I taught him in his offenses.
Now you were with the XFL for also a short period of time. You were with the Dallas Renegades, I believe.
Yeah, I was with Bob Stoops, and we lasted 5 games, and the virus hit and it shut the league down.
What's your relationship with Bob Stoops like?
Good guy. He's always been a good guy, and I enjoyed working with him. And he had a great run this year. They reinstituted the XFL, and Bob won the first championship.
So you have a league that you're involved with right now, the IFA.
Yeah.
For people that are skeptical about the IFA, because obviously nowadays we have so many leagues popping up. What about the IFA do you think is going to make it suitable?
I think what's going to be different in our league over what you're seeing in the XFL and the USFL, those leagues they're not interested in fan participation. In fact, a lot of them, they don't even have fans at their games a lot of times. The XFL does a little better than the USFL, but they're just strictly for TV. They practice in these bubbles. They stay in one place, and all the teams, and there's no fan interaction. And so we've got 3 franchises in Mexico: Cancun, Guadalajara, and Chihuahua, and they have a huge history in Mexico of playing American football, and they want to elevate it, and they want their players to elevate. And so that's one of the reasons we're going to do it. And we're going to do our training camps in our locations. We're going to do our selling tickets and having fans in the stands is going to be really important to us. We're going to do a lot of fan interaction, like youth camps and things like that. And we've got some good TV packages lined up that'll be announced soon. We've got a lot of other great things that it's going to all start coming out here pretty quick, because we're about 10 months away from training camp.
That's awesome. So could we expect the IFA to be on TV?
Yeah, you're going to be able to. Like I said, that'll get announced pretty soon.
Okay, so what are you looking for in terms of quarterback play?
Well, it's a pro developmental league. So I coached the spring league about 2 years ago, which was basically the forerunner of the USFL, and we won the championship there. And we had an air raid quarterback named Ryan Willis who ended up signing with the Bears after he played for us. So we're going to look for those kind of guys.
Definitely. I definitely can see that. Coach, last couple of questions here. So obviously I'm a young coach myself. What biggest piece of advice do you have for young coaches on how to build connections and move up the chain?
Well, I always tell young guys 2 things. Number one is learn your trade, learn your skills, the skills of your trade, and don't try to cut corners on that. And the second thing is, while you're doing that, don't worry about the level you're at. A lot of young guys getting in it right now, they're only doing it for the money. And when I came along, there wasn't any money in football. And most of the guys that are my age are between 10 years younger than me, and there just wasn't much money in football. And, you made good money if you get to be the head coach of Kentucky, but there's not many guys did that. And now there's a lot of money in particularly college football. And a lot of people are doing it for the money. If you do that, you're not going to enjoy it. You may as well, if you're doing it for the money, do something else for the money. Because even if you look at somebody like Nick Saban and the money he makes, if he was the CEO at a major corporation, which is basically what he is at Alabama, he'd be making 10 times what he's making. So it's still a game where you got to love the game. And then the last thing I always tell them is if you're like me, I never thought of this as work. we play football. We don't really work at football. We play football, and coaches get to play too. So, don't complain about the hours and don't complain about what you have to do. Just think of it this way: if you weren't doing this, you'd have to get a real job.
I definitely can believe that. So, Coach, my last question for you here.
Sure, Chris.
Right now, you're obviously you've been coaching football a long time. What are some goals that you have that you want to?
I really want to see this league get off the ground and establish something there that will last. And I think we can do that with Jason Adams, the league owner, is doing a great job of laying the groundwork, the foundation for it. And so that's my immediate goal. It has been for about 9 months, and we're getting ready to really have some exciting things happen.
Well, Coach, I really wish the IFA the best of luck. I can't wait to watch. Can't wait to stay in touch with you, and I wish you the best of luck. In your upcoming journeys. Keep inspiring, and I look forward to see what you have in store.
Well, good luck to you, Chris, and let me know when you want to do that air raid certified course. I'll make sure you get a good discount. Okay.
For sure, definitely.
All right. Thanks, buddy.
I'm a game changer. I'm a game changer.